Ladies and gentlemen, it is unbelievably unfair to be put on the stage after Ricky. Ricky is that wonderful astronaut, and I am a little sculptor from Dorset, Wiltshire border, in the UK. So how on earth can I even begin to follow that? But anyway, so all I'm going to do is do my best. And I've got my daughter here working a few slides and so on, because as a lot of my fellow pilots here know, I am completely useless with anything to do with technology. So let's give it a go. I was asked by the St. John of Jerusalem Eye Hospital group to create a sculpture that would go into their garden in Muristan, in the heart of the old city of Jerusalem. That's all very well, but it's not an easy thing to do. If you go to, and let's just describe Muristan. Muristan is the center of the old city of Jerusalem. If you are on the roof of their clinic, they're building a clinic, or have built a clinic in Muristan. Muristan, let's just say that as a start, Muristan has been a very key part of Jerusalem. It's been a medical hospital area since 700 AD. So it really goes back a huge amount of time in that respect. But if you're standing on the roof of what they've now got as their clinic, and you're looking off that way, what are you doing? You're looking straight over to the Mount of Olives. And for people who haven't visited the city before, and you know these extraordinary words, you see Mount of Olives and think, my gosh, that is the Mount of Olives. Wow. And you look down there below and you see the Garden of Gethsemane and all that we know that has happened in the Garden of Gethsemane. There they have olive trees that go back over 2,000 years. The magnificence of it is quite extraordinary. Then just over there, you've got that wonderful golden dome and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third most important site for Islam. Over there, you've got the western wall of the temple, the most important site for Judaism. Then just behind us here, we've got the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where Christ was crucified and entombed. It is quite one of the most remarkable places. And as such, the position of it puts us absolutely in the center of where the Abrahamic faiths meet in Jerusalem. And as Sebag Montefiore said, I don't know whether any of you have read his book. I know when I set off on this trip, I suggested that all my team should read it. It is about that thick, so I do forgive people if they haven't. But Sebag Montefiore described Jerusalem as the most important city, and as important on earth as it is in heaven. And if you think about where those Abrahamic faiths meet, you can understand that point of view. The commission was not exactly simple. I had to work out. Basically, the commission was to tell the whole history of Jerusalem from year one, from its very beginning, right into the present day, and then on into the future. It had to tell of the movement of people. It had to tell of the sort of dynamic movement of people. And if you think of what people have done over those years, the invasions that come from this way and the invasions that come from that way, the the walls of the city have been knocked down just to be rebuilt by the people, and it's a sort of completely wild dynamism of movement of people. And the commission also asked me to give the sculpture a message of hope for people forevermore. So therefore, you scratch your head a little bit, as I did. I had a full head of hair before I started this commission. I looked a bit like Ricky's friend up there, hair. But I scratched my head and I've gone bald. So I thought about it. I thought the best way to start would be to walk the city walls and to walk every inch of the city and to then branch out and drive the Holy Land. And that I did, driving down to the Dead Sea, Masada, to Jericho, up to Nazareth, Sea of Galilee. I drove to Bethlehem, and everywhere I went, you saw the olive tree. And the olive tree is so plainly vitally important to every person, every race, every creed. It's mentioned in all the great texts. The olive tree is fundamental to this part of the world. In the past and right forward now, and it will be forever into the future. So the olive tree is what I decided to center the sculpture on. If you imagine the knackered, gnarled walls of Jerusalem, and I say that in the most polite way, because the Jerusalem walls have got such depths of history and age. And we know that the more we age, the more gnarled we look. So the knackered, gnarled walls of Jerusalem, and you then imagine going down there to that Garden of Gethsemane, and you see the trees there that are so old and so knackered, so gnarled, and yet you see fruit and leaves and life. And all that really is hope. I mean, it's the hope for the future, those leaves and the fruit of the olive tree. It is so exciting, it's hope for the future. So I decided to base the sculpture on an olive tree. But I just didn't think it quite gave me the movement of people that I wanted, the sort of dynamic movement of people. But if you go to Jerusalem, as we are at this time of the year, you get that wild and exciting, screaming flight of the swift. The swift is a bird of such wonderful dynamics and dynamism. I mean, it's just so, and when you see it flying, flipping around, and you know that it's migrated from sub-Saharan Africa up here. It's nesting in the walls of the temple, as we're going to see later on. It's nests in all the holy sites. You find swifts nesting. So this became a bird that fascinated me, absolutely fascinated me. It's mastered flight in a way that certainly the pilots that I've brought over from here have not mastered. They've come a long way, but the swift, comparing to the swift, have no way of mastered it. The swift can fly far better than Ricky can. He goes, and then depends on an awful lot of things. The swift is a bird that is of complete magic. So I thought I'd therefore make, instead of having a canopy of leaves and olives, I'd make a canopy of swifts. So circumstances took me to Tantur, a garden just outside Bethlehem, where I found some lovely olive trees. I thought I wanted to make an olive tree. So do I make it out of clay and I thought, whoa, that's quite interesting. I then thought the good Lord was a far better sculptor than I am. And so I chose a tree, and I then found a foundry in Netanya, and asked them if they would come and mold it for me. They thought I was absolutely barking mad, which I think is possibly, maybe definitely true. And so they came and they molded the tree. Yes, and then, but when we were molding it in Tantor, what did we have? We had Jews from Netanya working on the tree. I had Palestinians, both Christian and Muslim, working on the tree. I had myself, a Catholic, working on the tree, all working on the tree together at the same time, starting the creation of this work. The tree, I managed to get Michael Dan, a wonderful Canadian Jewish gentleman. He sponsored the whole thing for the Order of St. John, which is a Christian organization that works for everyone. It works for quite literally everyone from all religions and nationalities, pilgrims or whatever. They do work very largely for the Palestinian people. So this tree was already beginning to cross the religious and political divides. And so we molded the tree. I then made some swifts. Yeah, these are some of them. And I made 150 swifts, which are going to go in the canopy of the tree. And oh yes, that's me. And I had them on the end of flight lines, which really just give the energy, the dynamics. And so the tree began to take shape. And from the beginning of February, when I first came out to the Holy Land, with a blank sheet of paper, we had a sculpture of an olive tree with its roots going right down to the heart of the old city, and symbolically that was important, because the roots go down to the heart of the old city, it comes up and then out through the branches of the trees, then the explosion of swifts that will migrate out from that tree, carrying their message of hope. I then put on the walls around the garden and in the hospital, and indeed as far further as afield, through UK, into America and to Australia, we've got groups of swifts flying in groups of 3. Now these are my little, what I would describe as my prayer flag for the Abrahamic faiths to fly together. And so, but all those swifts, even the ones that fly away from this tree, they are all part of the same sculpture. So the sculpture and this message of hope from the heart of the old, magnificent old city, that city is so important as on earth as it is in heaven. It booms out and goes around the world, and every swift that flies away is part of the sculpture. It is just making the sculpture bigger and bigger and bigger. But the story doesn't end there. My friend Amnon Han, who I suspect might be here, Amnon and I worked to. When I say I think really Amnon did it. He put swift boxes up around the walls above the clinic. We got 15 swift boxes, 15 families of swifts. And so he's now encouraged the real swift to become part of this sculpture. So those swifts that take on those boxes will be a part of the sculpture, and they're already there. So when they migrate in, they're migrating into the tree. They're winging their way around the tree. And when they head home carrying that message of hope across the world. The swift, to me, is a bird of hope. Hope to see it before it arrives, the excitement of its screaming flight while it's here. And then when it departs, you look forward to seeing the following year. It is hope. So where am I? Yeah, I did have some notes, but I really can't read notes. Blind as a bat. And when I then decided to take this thing a little smidge further than leaving it with live swifts. I was here in Tel Aviv this time last year, talking at the International Swifts Conference. And at the end of that, General Mansour was there, General Barak Spiegel was also there, Yossi, and anyway, at the end of that, I said, now I think what we ought to do is to take this message one stage further again. I want to migrate into Jerusalem with Swifts. And I think they were all beginning to think, yes, this chap is barking mad. I want to migrate into Jerusalem with little aeroplanes. Small, humble, nothing smart, but little aeroplanes. And I want to migrate with crews from representing all the Abrahamic faiths. I thought they were going to think I really am ready for to be put quietly away. But they all saw what I was trying to do and took it on, and Yossi said, yes, of course, we must do it next year. In other words, now. So I thought, my gosh, I've given myself a problem. Because this is not an easy thing to arrange. So what I then did is have a little panic call around a lot of my friends in the UK and saying, would you like to come and join me on this project? And sure enough, I had lots of volunteers to do it. And so this is where the whole idea of Flight to Hope began. And 8 of us, 8 little aeroplanes, led by my one, which is the slowest and the slowest. It's just, my little aeroplane's made of wood and it's made of canvas. It's made in 1964. And it's not very fast. But we flew from the UK down through Europe, across the Mediterranean to Cyprus, and then across to Haifa. That's fine, but there's an awful lot of water to fly over. And we discovered, to our horror, that, in fact, the weather gods had decided to throw a major spanner in the works, and we ended up with storms through Europe. But that was just by and by. That's part of the wonderful challenge of this journey. We got ourselves to Haifa, although we'd had such a sort of interesting, relatively stressful trip over. We got ourselves to Haifa on precisely the right date. We got ourselves down to Eilat at precisely the right date. One of the things that surprises me is that Yossi has not lost any of his hair, because I know he was pulling at it like crazy as he saw everything coming about and us beginning to sort of be challenged by the weather. Anyway, we made it. We made it down to Eilat. We then had we got the crews together. We had a flight being led by me of the Abrahamic flight. We flew, well, at least we flew from Yahev up to Masada, where we landed minus 1,280 feet below sea level. We had the huge pleasure of having on board not just Yossi, General Mansour, Ricky. We had a wonderful, and Amnon, he flew with us. So we had a wonderful cross-section of people. We were all migrating with the swift, with birds, up the Jordan Valley, crossing those religious and political boundaries. We flew over the top of the end of the Dead Sea into Amman. We flew around that extraordinary city of Jerusalem, this extraordinary city of Jerusalem. We managed to find, see there, that is us flying around Temple Mount. This is flying into Jerusalem with birds. It is part of the sculpture. This flight is part of the sculpture. That's my little aeroplane up front. And a friend of mine called Bill Hall, who's in the middle of the audience there, that's his. This was a sight and a dream that made us weep. I certainly was in emotional turmoil seeing it. And I'm told that General Mansour also found it very moving. I think we all did. So Flight to Hope is the culmination really of this sculpture. It is part of this sculpture. And we are, like the Swifts, we will always be part of the sculpture. Everyone who's involved in it. And my gosh, it could never have happened without the extraordinary effort of Yossi and his team, Eli Perez and so on. It really, the dynamics of it could never have worked. It could never have worked without the deep support of General Mansour Abu Rashid and the Jordanian authorities and the Israeli authorities, a huge amount of effort. But we have carved a message of hope and mutual respect in the air above the Holy Land. And that is a message that I think is something so, so important. It is a bit of sculpture in three dimensions carved into the air that I think should never, ever disappear. And I enormously thank those people who helped us put it together. Thank you.